DaFAQ!
Big K, I've got a beautiful banger of a Shimsham, and I want to keep it a solid 10. What should my daily care routine be?
Excellent question, Stud Muffin Tomas. Many people are rightfully concerned about how they tend to their shamisen, fearing that they might accidentally damage something if they don't take the proper care procedures. As it turns out, outside of the general don't drop it rule, there is really nothing special you have to do. And today, I will show you the general care procedures most players use. Here's the most important thing for daily care. When you play, your hands impart a tiny amount of oil onto the strings, saw, skin, and bachi. Unnoticeable in the beginning, but over time that can build up into a thick, tacky grime. If the grime builds up under the strings, that can dull the tone, and if it builds up on the saw, it might not slide as easily as it did before. Granted, the yubikake is somewhat wiping the saw all the time, but, other hands touching and such, it could happen. In any case, when the grime does build up, it will need to be scraped off, and then the surface cleaned with a damp cloth. You can easily avoid this by simply wiping down your instrument after your practice sessions. Using a dry microfiber cloth called a sulfuki, wipe the saw, strings, skin, and bachi, and that will easily remove trace amounts of oil and dirt off your instruments and will buff the surface. Now, if that's too much of a hassle, you really don't have to do it every single time. The grime does take a while to build up, and while I do think it's easiest if you can turn it into a regular habit, wiping it every 3 or 4 practice sessions will be just fine. If you want to keep your shamisen extra pristine, you might want to wipe your itamaki every so often, because grime can build up there too when you handle the itamaki. Now, wiping each individual surface can be a bit tedious, and given that it doesn't really impact your playing experience whatsoever, it might be worth waiting until you notice it and then take a damp cloth and wipe it away. Or not. Either way is fine. It's up to you. Next, the skin. One of the most important elements of shamisen, but even this is not a big deal to care for. First, natural skin. The required care relates to moisture. And note, moisture itself doesn't damage the skin per se. It's only damaging when it's loose water around the edge of the dough. Around this perimeter is where the skin is glued down with a water-soluble glue. Loose drops of water can absorb into the skin, dissolve the glue, and then the skin will separate from the dough. Fortunately, water doesn't absorb right away, so if you do notice loose water on your shamisen, which hopefully is a rare occurrence, take a towel and wipe it away as fast as you can, and it should be just fine. So that's moisture as it relates to water droplets. There's also humidity. And the reason why most players want to keep their shamisen out of humid conditions is because the natural skin absorbs moisture from the air, and that dulls the tone. General principle, dry conditions sharpen the tone, wet conditions dampen it. Traditionally, the dough end of the shamisen is stored in a washi bag. Note, eventually the washi paper does get saturated with moisture and will need to be replaced with a fresh, dry bag. Also, another useful moisture wicking tool is the manyo pad. This slides under the strings and draws moisture from the skin into the pad itself. Like the washi bag, the manyo also gets saturated with moisture, but that can be dried out by putting desiccant packets on top of it. Lastly, if a player wants as sharp a tone as possible before a concert, a trick they have is to separate the dough from the saw and gently heat the natural skin over a heater. In just a few seconds, the moisture in the skin turns to water vapor inside the dough. The player then blows through one hole and the water vapor goes out the other side. With all that moisture gone, the skin will be drier and the tone will be sharper. Now, eventually the skin will absorb some of the ambient humidity again, but the manyo pad and the washi bag will help keep conditions generally drier for a while. So that's care regarding moisture control for natural skin. Next, cleaning natural skin. Again, sometimes oil from our hands gets on the skin and eventually brown smudges can build up. Often you can use the sulfuki to wipe it off before buildup occurs, but if that doesn't work, the next best thing is to use a well-wrung damp cloth to wipe the surface until it's clean. You can even use a little bit of soap too, that's okay. Now, yes, of course, technically that's introducing moisture into the skin, but it's so little, you're only going to be wiping a couple spots. That's going to dry off. So nothing you need to be concerned about. Just make sure the cloth is really well wrung and then just wipe the spots until it's clean. Next, synthetic skin, like this. Synthetic skin is so durable and you don't have to worry at all about humidity. The only thing you have to watch out for, though, is high heat. While the skin itself won't break, the glue holding the skin tends to fail above 100 degrees or high 30s, low 40s and such. It's okay in the mid upper 90s or 30s-ish Celsius, but some folks have left their shamisen in a hot car or a hot closet and the skin peeled off. This, again, is something that's easily manageable. Just don't leave your shamisen in places where you know is going to be sweltering. You wouldn't leave your baby there? You wouldn't leave your baby there. Yeah. For cleaning synthetic skin like hibiki, put a generous amount of soap onto a damp cloth and vigorously rub it into the skin to remove oil and dirt. Then, wipe with a clean cloth to remove the soap. Next, I'll quickly touch on a few points which I've covered in other videos, but is especially relevant to this one as well. Be sure to remove your koma after your practice sessions. Leaving it in there will shorten the life of the strings and puts continued stress on the natural skin, possibly causing it to rupture before it's time. To remove the koma, simply raise the strings with one hand like so, and then the koma can easily slide out like this. And bonus point of convenience, if your shamisen is in a safe space, you can place the foot of the koma under the ichinoito, like so. This keeps it in place and makes sliding it back in more convenient. Next, no need to loosen the strings. If they're tuned to around C or B and the koma is removed, it'll be just fine. Lastly, and least importantly, dust. The shamisen, especially the tenjin, has a lot of angles and sharp corners where dust collects, and it's not so easy to clean out. It's entirely harmless, but if you're neurotic about that sort of thing, definitely keep your shamisen covered. I highly recommend wrapping it in a nagapukuro. This long cloth sack keeps dust and cookie crumbs off of the shamisen. And this is how to use it. Find the end of the nagapukuro that's sewn on both sides, which forms a pocket. Slide the dough into that pocket and take the other end and put it around the tenjin. Then turn the two sides 90 degrees so that when it's opened, you can see the tenjin. Or so when the cloth drapes over the tenjin, as my friend Grant says, it looks like a Sith Lord. Then fold the two sides over themselves like so. Then take the cord and wrap it around the saw, starting at the base, and wrap it until, around the area where the saw and tenjin come together. And then put the end of the cord like so it stays in place. Now you can wrap and tie it loosely or keep it tight. Either way is just fine. Personally, I like to keep it tight so you can see all the curves, but it doesn't really matter either way. And that's how you do it. Alternatively, you can put it in a large plastic bag or wrap it in a towel, a bed sheet, or put it in a case. And if you don't mind a little dust, you don't have to worry about it altogether. And that's about it. Caring for your shamisen is very simple, practical stuff. And I'd even say the most important part is literally caring, i.e., don't leave it in hot places. Don't drop it. Be careful around water and, like personal hygiene, keep it clean. Kyle Abbott.